Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and right now we'll be talking about Git and GitHub. I feel like every developer has this challenge when they hear about Git or GitHub. So some may think that it is something difficult. Programming in general is something that's vast. So adding technology each time, there's always one update or the other, something new to learn. So adding Git on top of it might make some people feel a bit pressured. But Git GitHub is not something as difficult as it may sound. In this video, I'll be breaking it down in the simplest way possible. And by the end of this video, you'll understand what Git is, how to start a Git project, how to save your code, and how to send it to GitHub. And I'll also make sure that whenever you're working on a project, you would be able to seamlessly, integrate Git into whatever it is you're doing. So now, what is Git? Git is a version control system. It tracks changes in your code and it helps developers manage projects easily. Okay, let's say for example, you create a folder and then you want to start writing code, HTML code, CSS code. Any change that you make from creating the file to working on the file, all those things are changes that need to be tracked, and it can with the help of Git. So Git can help you take notes of those changes. It can save those changes so that it can be remembered at different points in time depending on when you checkpoint or when you save those changes. Because of the fact that it tracks the changes that happens, it is aware of what is in the whole folder, and it can help you transfer those things to GitHub, which we'll talk about later. But for now, think of Git like a timeline for your project. Every important change gets recorded. You can go back if something breaks, or let me say you created a website now, and then along the line you made a mistake somewhere, and you can't find out what that mistake is. And let's say, for example, it's one of those very annoying mistakes where it's just, let me see, instead of typing like div, you typed di, and you forgot the v. And you're checking the whole, how many 40 lines of code for where exactly the issue is. With the help of Git, you can just, go back to a previous version that worked. And then, from there, you can follow up, and then that bug will no longer be there. So with the help of Git, there's no more, um, having, let's say you create a file and you name it project, and then later, because you made that project that you're working on better, you now change the name of the file from project to project final, and then let's say you work on it again and change it again to project final.js, that kind of thing. But we no longer need that right now. Git helps your project remember itself. So first off, before we start, I want you to take note of this link, or use this link. If you don't have Git, use this link. Come here to Windows. There are different versions here. You have Windows, you have Mac, you have Linux. So whatsoever it is that you are, whatever laptop device that you're using, you can find Git installation file here and install it so that you can follow along with what we're doing. So after downloading Git, you can head on to your VS Code. So what we'll do, let me open it from the start so that you can see what I want you to see. Okay, that is now done. Please. Let's open a new window. So what I want you to do is create a file anywhere. It can be anywhere. Just create a file, a new file, and name it Git. Now what I want you to do is head on to your VS Code, then open that folder from your VS Code. Okay, so we are in our Git folder. So now use this code to open your terminal. You can open your terminal normally, but what I usually do is I click on Control caps, and there's this wavy sign on top of tab. Yeah, when you press that, your Git terminal, your terminal will open up. We are using the PowerShell terminal. Now to start Git in your folder, you have to initialize it. After downloading Git, you have to make sure that you activate it yourself whenever you are working on a project. And to do that, we need to initialize Git. So the command for that is git init. Okay, now they said here initialized empty Git repository in that file path. So right now Git has been initialized in the folder Git. So now that Git has been initialized, has been activated in our folder, it tracks all the changes that will be happening in this folder. So now let's make some changes to this folder. Let's see index.html. Now I just created a new file. Let's see what Git can say about this file that I just created. To do that, type git status. Now, as you can see here, on tracked files, Git has been able to notice that a new file has been added that has not been tracked yet. It has not been, identified, noticed. So to identify this file, to track the file, what we need to do is type git add full stop. Let's check the status of our Git repository. Now, as you can see, the file is no longer untracked. Git has been able to identify this file. It's like saying that Git has noticed this change. But you see, we don't just add files. What I just did now is called staging. Like that's the professional term for it. It's called staging a file. But if you dumb it down a bit, it's just Git noticing that a change has occurred. Before the change happened, and Git knew that the change was there, but it was not able to identify. It's like the change happened, Git knew that a change happened, but it was not watching. It did not know what exactly the change was. So git add kind of confirms or validates the change to Git. But then all this grammar, all this thing I'm saying is just so that Git can record this change. Now there's a process that happens before Git is able to record a change. The first thing you do is that you git add, you stage the file, and the next thing you do is you commit the file. What I mean by commit is that you create a checkpoint. It's just like saving in a game. In a game, when you save a point, there's usually a title assigned to that change. Saved file 1, saved file 2, that kind of thing. There's a title attached to the change, and the states, like how far you've gone in that game, is also saved. So git commit does something similar, and this is how it happens. So now we've staged the file. The next thing we do is git commit. This is the code. Then we say this -m is kind of like a way to add a message to the checkpoints that we're about to create. And we'll say, I can say that I created index.html. Okay, so now Git is saying one file changed, create mode. This is just Git saying that the checkpoint has been created. So with this now, let's say 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 da, da, da. I'm making changes to the index.html file. Now I just saved, when you make changes in your file, you have to save it for the file to change. It's just like normal you work on Microsoft Word without saving it, the file has not been changed. If you delete it and you don't save it, everything that you did is gone. So I have to save it for the index.html file to change as usual. So now index.html has been changed. So if I type git status again, you will see that Git is saying that a change occurred, but it cannot identify it. So to identify this change, we have to go through that process again. To create the checkpoint that we did before, first you have to notify what change, what has been changed, and then create a checkpoint for that change. So to do that, we do git add full stop. Full stop means the dot that you are seeing here means all files. I could, there's where I could specify, one file, like save git add this one file. But what I usually do is that I just put git add dot so that it can just identify all the changes that have happened. So git add dot, now it has been, see, let's try git status again. Now it has moved from red to green. So now we can git commit. Remember, you -m and then you type, what you want the title for your change to be. So let's see, added numbers. Okay, so the change has been recorded, the checkpoint has been made. And that is basically it for Git. This is the major thing you need to know for Git when it comes to working on a project. So now let's move into GitHub. So what we'll be doing now is that we'll push our file to GitHub. So GitHub is basically a way to store your projects online. And we're making use of a special code called git push, but we won't be doing it the normal way. So first of all, if you don't have a GitHub profile yet, then you are going to have to create, you're going to have to register. After registering, let's find this on your browser and then go to new repository. In GitHub, we usually identify new folders as repositories. So creating a new repository is just like creating a new folder. So let's call this repository Git. Yeah, I think that's available. Now there's something now this is what happens after creating your repository. There's no code here. This is just like a new folder that's been created that's empty, so there's nothing to display. Now see this code here, copy it, and then come down to your terminal and come down to your terminal. Okay, let me, before I talk about that, there's something I always do when I notice that my code is too much. I just type clear so that everything that's around here will delete, then it's back at the start, so I can so that it won't be too messy over here. So what you do after you copy this code, so you come here and you paste it, then press enter. So what this does is that it's links our GitHub URL to our Git folder. Here's what this git remote add origin does. Then git branch is that it's, well, we will get into git branch in our next class. But git branch is just like let's say let's say every company has a website. Okay, most companies have websites, but those websites are most likely always worked on, when there's an update, there's always something new that comes into the website. There can be updates, there can be new versions and all those things. But then for those updates to happen, it has to be worked on by developers. But you see, there's this thing that you would notice along the line, or you already do, that when working on a on a website, little changes can cause the whole website to crash, and you wouldn't want that to happen for a company that the website is probably being visited like minutes after minutes, hour after hour. So what we do is that we create a branch, we create a clone of the code. We create a clone of the HTML code or whatever file it is, and we work on that clone. What And then that clone that we work on, we call it a branch. It's just like a tree with different branches, and everything still goes up. So we create a branch of the original code and we work on that code, so that when we are done working on that code, we can merge it with the main thing. And then nobody knows that, whatever we are working on does not interfere with the original file, and everybody's happy, everything works fine. That's basically what a git branch is. Then this git push is the main thing. This git push origin pushes our code from Git, from our local folder, to online, which is GitHub. And now if I were to refresh this, yeah, you can find, or you will find, our local file on the internet. So yeah, this is basically GitHub and git push for you, and git push. So lastly, we'll be working on something called git clone. So git clone copies a repository and downloads it into your local repository, into your local folder. And how it works is using the code git clone plus the link of that repository. So let's try something now. Go to your folder, create a new folder, call it whatever it is you want. For me, I will call mine bubble. Yeah, and then enter the folder, and then open the folder or enter that folder with VS Code. Okay, let's do what we did before, git caps lock and then the wavy thing above tab to open your terminal. So let's look for a repository, one of my repositories, and then let's try to clone it. So let's look at this one first, Git. Okay, so this is my URL. I will copy it and then head to our terminal in the VS Code and type git clone, then the URL that I just copied, and then enter. So as you can see, the online repository has been downloaded into our local file. So you may think that Git feels intimidating at first, but once you understand the workflow, it actually becomes really easy.